Welcome back. The actual official change of presidential power will be complete as of noon tomorrow, but the work of tracking and fixing the government's toughest problems does not stop. Chris Mihm is Managing Director of Strategic Issues at the Government Accountability Office. Chris, it's great to see you again. I'll forgive you if you're biased toward the high-risk list, but what do you think the incoming administration should pay attention to the most to get a grip of where the government is as of January 20th noon when they take office?
Well, you're right. The high-risk list, Francis, and I would put on there also the duplication, overlap, and fragmentation. But I mean, seriously, though, I think there's a couple of things right out of the box that the new administration needs to be focused on. And one of those is to make sure that there's a successful and seamless handoff on some of the major management issues that are being confronted. And that is that, we have seen in the past that where you get management breakdowns is when we lose momentum across political leadership. Now, obviously, the new team has to come in and has to make sure that they're comfortable with the direction that we're going. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that on those projects that should move forward, that the momentum is maintained. The second thing that's very important, I think, is that both the quality of the sub-cabinet picks and the speed in which they are put in place will be important, and the extent to which out of the box that they can develop good working relationships with the career civil service. In the past, again, where we have seen problems, it's right at the outset where those good relationships have not taken place, and that if there's a breakdown there, that can really reverberate throughout. And then third, the extent to which right away that the new administration begins to take action on already the known risks, whether it be the cybersecurity hack that we've recently had, or obviously the COVID response and the vaccine rollout. Do they get on top of that right out of the box? Those are three things that just kind of immediately that they need to be focused on.
About your second point, Chris, there are two elements to that I think are encouraging for those of us that pay attention to the way the federal government manages itself and people manage the enterprise. One is the fact that Max Dyer was on this program not too long ago, the Partnership Public Service, and talking about the emphasis that he sees the Biden team putting on the presidential appointees that don't require Senate confirmation. That's one, because theoretically you can get those people into place faster. And the other piece is you have a whole lot of people coming in that have experience with the executive branch from the Obama administration. Are those two positives in your view?
Yes, I would absolutely agree with Max on that. Those are both very healthy developments. Is that obviously those political appointees at the sub-cabinet level is where a lot of the day-to-day work and certainly the management of federal programs gets done, and making sure that you've got good people in there that know the workings of government, in addition to just knowing a policy area, but know actually project management and how things get done is vitally important. And then the other point as well is also very important.
I fixate with you and your colleagues at GAO on the high-risk list, so cheers to you for mentioning the duplication, fragmentation, and overlap work, too. There's a lot of stuff on that list, isn't there, that the executive branch can take on its own, on its own without relying on Congress, right, Chris?
Absolutely. There's, the next high-risk list will be coming out in early February, and then the duplication overlap work will be coming out later in the spring. There are issues in there that are within the congressional purview, and we do highlight those. But an awful lot of that, in fact, the majority of that, are things that agencies can do working with Congress, keeping them informed, but they're within the agency purview on that. One other aspect on this that's important is that each year the Comptroller General sends a letter to the heads of each of the agencies with the priority open recommendations that are at that agency. We're going to be doing that again this spring. Any given agency can have dozens, or in some cases, if it's a large agency, even hundreds of open recommendations. We found that helping them focus on what are those that are the greatest priority for them, that is the greatest risk in terms of health and safety and well-being for the American citizens, or those where cost is vulnerable, that helps them really target and focus their efforts, and that'll again be coming out later this spring.
How do you assess those, though, when there are so many different dynamics at play with the various risks and open recommendations that an agency's up against, Chris?
Yeah, the big thing is that part of what we use is that, what are those types of issues where intervention at the very highest part of the organization, that is at the secretarial or administrator level, would be most helpful in terms of and be catalytic to actually getting action. And so it's a lot of our recommendations, they just take time, and that and they're being worked down at a program or operational level, and that's fine. We keep focused on those and keep working with the career staff on that. But we also realize that there's a set of recommendations where either the problem is huge or such that they've stalled, and that there really is a need for the head of the agency to intervene so that she or he can kind of get it going. That's really what we focus those priority recommendations on.
We have a minute or less left, Chris. From either a professional or personal perspective, what would you watch moving forward? Maybe we talk about the first 100 days of a new administration all the time. What would you watch from a management perspective in the first 100 days to see what direction you think the new administration is going?
I think there are two things that I'm going to be looking at. Is that first, to the extent to which the Biden administration is understanding or seeking to understand the capacities, the management capacities that they have within each of these agencies, is that they're coming in obviously with a very ambitious agenda. All new incoming administrations do. We have enormous challenges in this country. They need to make sure that within individual agencies, there's the capacity, the management capacity to execute on that they have the skills, the right people, the IT, the financial management in place in order to do that. Likewise, many of their issues are cross-cutting in nature. They need to make sure that they have the cross-cutting governance strategies and mechanisms, institutional mechanisms in place. And then the third thing we're going to be looking at, or that I would be most interested in, is to make sure as they roll out their agenda that there's good project management behind it. That is, that goals are being set, milestones, targets, follow-up, corrective action plans when things aren't being done. That's what's so vital in many of these management areas. The breakdown is the failure of implementation, and I'm hopeful that the incoming administration will see that and understand that the success of any of their policy agenda is completely dependent on sound management and good governance.
Chris Mihm, you're always terrific. Thanks for coming on.
My great pleasure, sir. Take care, Francis.